My name is Elena Harper, and at 57, I thought I'd weathered every storm life could muster. But nothing could have prepared me for that rainy Tuesday in late April 2025, when I sat across from Daniel Warwick in his glass-walled office at Nextron Dynamics. The Seattle skyline stretched behind him, a cold, indifferent witness to my professional undoing. "Elena," he said, his voice as flat as the gray clouds outside, "we're outsourcing your entire department. Your last day is Friday." The words hit like a slow-motion wrecking ball, shattering the 24-year foundation I'd built at Nextron. My stomach clenched, but I kept my face composed, my hands folded tightly in my lap to hide the tremor. Daniel, the new division head with his crisp 9-month tenure in Harvard MBA, had already begun unraveling the legacy I'd spent over 2 decades crafting. I nodded slowly, forcing the lump in my throat down. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said, rising to extend my hand. His shoulders relaxed. He'd braced for tears or a desperate plea. Instead, I offered a firm handshake, my calm a carefully constructed facade. What he didn't know, what no one at Nextron except my attorney Rachel knew, was that I held the patents to the VAX 500 series, the hydraulic automation system that drove nearly half the company's revenue. Those patents were my lifeline, my silent rebellion, and they were about to turn his calculated move into a costly misstep. As I left his office, the weight of 24 years pressed down, a tangible force against my chest. I joined Nextron in the spring of 1999, a 33-year-old engineer fresh from grad school, carrying a battered briefcase and a head full of untested ideas. Back then, we operated out of a converted warehouse on the edge of Seattle, the air thick with the metallic tang of solder and the buzz of shared ambition. The floors sagged underfoot, the heating sputtered, and the coffee was always burnt, but it was our crucible. Clara Beaumont, our founder, greeted me with a handshake that could have cracked walnuts. "Elena," she said, her eyes blazing with vision, "we're going to redefine automation. You'll own what you create here." She wasn't just talking about pride, she meant it legally. When Nextron teetered on bankruptcy in 2001, I agreed to a lower salary in exchange for retaining patent rights to my innovations. In return, Nextron gained exclusive licensing as long as I remained employed, a deal Clara signed, now buried in decades-old files, forgotten by everyone but me and Rachel. Over the years, I poured my soul into the VAX system, a hydraulic framework that evolved from a clunky prototype to an industry cornerstone. It powered factory assembly lines, medical robotics, even experimental aerospace projects, its iterations, VAX 100, VAX 300, VAX 500, marking milestones in my career and Nextron's rise. My team of 7, including my protégé Sophie Carter, was a tight-knit unit, responsible for 6 product lines that collectively drove over 45% of Nextron's revenue. We worked late nights in the lab, skipped holidays for deadlines, and traded family dinners for breakthroughs. I never chased the spotlight, content with the quiet thrill of solving complex problems and mentoring talents like Sophie, who joined us straight out of college with a spark I'd once carried myself. But to Daniel, we were a liability. With his spreadsheet-driven worldview, he saw only high salaries and a department of 7 that could be replaced by 15 engineers in Singapore at a third of the cost. His efficiency models ignored the institutional knowledge, the creative problem-solving, and, most critically, the patent ownership that tethered the VAX system to me. He didn't realize that the moment I walked out, his new team would slam into an invisible wall, unable to modify a single line of code without my consent. That ignorance would be his undoing. Walking back to my department, I passed my team, each grappling with the same gut punch. Sophie, her eyes red-rimmed from crying, caught my arm as I passed her desk. "Elena, how can they do this? The VAX was your creation, they can't just erase you like that." I squeezed her shoulder, offering a faint, reassuring smile. "It's not over yet," I murmured, my voice steady despite the storm inside. I couldn't tell her the truth, not yet. The patents were my secret, a card I'd hold until the timing was perfect. Mark, our software lead, stared blankly at his screen, while Priya, our robotics specialist, muttered curses under her breath. The air was thick with disbelief. That afternoon, I began clearing my desk, each item a memory stitched into my 24-year tapestry. A photo from the VAX 100 launch in 2003, Clara and I grinning beside the prototype, her arm around my shoulders. A mug Sophie gave me last Christmas, etched with engineering wizard in her shaky handwriting. A notebook filled with sketches from late-night brainstorming sessions, its pages yellowed and creased. The severance email from HR arrived mid-afternoon, 12 weeks' pay for 24 years of dedication, a paltry sum that stung more than it should have. But as I packed, a flicker of resolve ignited. Daniel thought he'd written my ending. He was about to learn how wrong he was. That evening, I sat in Rachel's cluttered office, the city lights casting a soft glow through her window. She spread the patent documents across her desk, her fingers tracing the lines with a lawyer's precision. "The licensing agreement is ironclad," she said, her voice tinged with satisfaction. "It terminates with your employment. Any attempt to alter the VAX system, code, design, hardware, triggers a licensing verification they can't pass without you. They'll realize it within a week or two, depending on how fast they try to push changes." I exhaled, the tension of the day loosening its grip. "Send the cease and desist Monday," I said. "Let's see how long it takes them to scramble." The weekend stretched before me, an unfamiliar expanse of freedom after decades of Nextron's relentless rhythm. Saturday, I spent in my backyard, pruning rosebushes and planting tulip bulbs, the soil cool and grounding beneath my fingers. Each thorn prick was a reminder of resilience. A small pain to anchor me as I wrestled with the anger and hurt. I lost myself in the task, the repetitive motion soothing the raw edges of my emotions. The roses, their petals bruised from the recent rain, seemed to mirror my own battered spirit, yet they stood tall, a quiet defiance I drew strength from. Sunday, I drove to Puget Sound, hiking along the rocky trails, the wind carrying the salt of the sea. I watched gulls soar overhead, their freedom a stark contrast to the chains I'd carried. For the first time in years, I felt the stirrings of possibility, a path forward emerging from the wreckage. Monday morning arrived with an unfamiliar quiet, no alarm, no rushed breakfast, no commute. I savored my tea, reading engineering journals I'd neglected, letting the silence settle around me like a comforting blanket. At 9 a.m., Rachel's letter would land in Nextron's legal department, a quiet detonation. I spent the day reflecting, sketching ideas for a personal project, a garden irrigation system I'd toyed with for years but never had time for. 3 days later, my phone buzzed. "Elena, this is Karen from legal," a tense voice said. "We've received some concerning correspondence from your attorney. There must be a misunderstanding about the patents." I kept my tone even, almost polite. "No misunderstanding, Karen. The VAX patents are mine. The license ended with my termination. My attorney can clarify." A long pause, then a hurried, "Could we schedule a meeting?" I deflected. "Rachel handles all communication now. You have her contact." The calls escalated over the next week, Karen, then the CTO, then Daniel himself. His voicemail was clipped, the corporate polish fraying. "Elena, we need to resolve this patent issue. It's disrupting operations. Call me back." I didn't. Rachel kept me updated, her voice brimming with amusement. "They're in a panic. The Singapore team can't touch the VAX system without triggering alerts. The VAX 600 project stalled, and production's grinding to a halt. They're scrambling to rehire your team, but most have moved on." I felt a pang for my former colleagues, especially Sophie, who'd landed at Cascade Technologies, a rival firm. Rachel assured me Mark had joined a startup, and Priya was thriving at a defense contractor. Their talents were too valuable to sit idle. 10 days after my departure, I took a trip to Whidbey Island, craving distance from the chaos. The ferry ride across the Sound was a meditative pause, the water stretching gray and endless beneath a leaden sky. I stayed in a small inn, its creaky floors and sea view windows a stark contrast to Nextron's sterility. Each morning, I walked the beaches, the cold sand seeping into my shoes, the rhythm of the waves a balm for my frayed nerves. I journaled for the first time in years, pouring out the anger at Daniel's short-sightedness, the hurt of being discarded, and the strange liberation of being untethered. Daniel's messages piled up, each more desperate. His final voicemail cracked with panic. "Elena, the board's on my back. We've halted 3 product lines. Name your terms, please." Nextron's stock had dipped 11%, industry blogs buzzing with speculation about production woes. Rachel sent our proposal, exclusive licensing at a fair rate, consulting fees at 6 times my old salary, veto power over VAX changes, and training for the new engineers. It was aggressive, but their desperation left them little room to negotiate. Then came a knock at my door. I opened it to find Daniel, his tie askew, dark circles shadowing his eyes. "The board's replaced me," he said, his voice hollow. "I'm being demoted to a regional role in Chicago." I studied him, not with triumph but with a weary recognition of his ignorance. He hadn't learned a thing from this. "This wasn't personal, Daniel," I said softly. "It was about valuing what I built over decades." He nodded, eyes downcast, and left. I closed the door, feeling a weight lift, though not entirely from satisfaction. I sat by my window that night, watching the rain, wondering what Clara would have made of this turn. The new interim head was Lillian Beaumont, Clara's daughter. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, its warm lights and the scent of fresh-baked bread a contrast to Nextron's sterile corridors. Lillian, with her mother's sharp eyes and a quiet intensity, stirred her coffee methodically. "Mom always said you were Nextron's soul," she said. I should have stayed closer after she stepped back. She'd been a silent board member, her focus on global sustainability projects, until the patent crisis yanked her into action. "The board approved your proposal," she said, sliding a folder across the table. "But I want more. I want you as Director of Innovation, with a board seat, full autonomy, and the budget to rebuild your team." I leaned back, surprised. "What about the Singapore team?" I asked. "They'll handle maintenance under your oversight," she said. "Core innovation stays in Seattle. With you leading, you'll have whatever resources you need to bring back your people." I thought of Sophie, thriving at Cascade, and the others scattered by Daniel's cuts, Mark at his startup, Priya at the defense contractor. "I'll need competitive packages to lure them," I said. Lillian nodded. "Done. The board's authorized full budget control. I want this fixed, Elena, and I want you leading it." That night, Rachel called, her voice electric. "The director role includes a 4% ownership stake. Vested immediately." I laughed, stunned. "Lillian's not playing," Rachel said. "You're one of the biggest shareholders now." It felt like the universe tipping the scales, a reward for 24 years of sacrifice. I spent the evening reviewing the terms, the numbers blurring as I imagined rebuilding. I called my sister, Margaret, to share the news, her excitement a rare bright spot. She'd always teased me about my workaholic tendencies, and now she marveled at the turnaround. Monday, I stepped onto Nextron's executive floor. My new office offering sweeping views of the Olympics and downtown. A small package waited, a framed photo of Clara and me from 2003, standing by the first Vax prototype, her arm around my shoulders. Lillian's note read, "Mom said you were Nextron's heart. Let's make it official." I smiled, then texted Sophie, "I'm back. Fancy building something revolutionary?" Her reply was instant, "Quitting Cascade today." I followed up with Mark and Priya, their responses equally enthusiastic. The pieces were falling into place. 2 weeks into my role, I requested access to Nextron's financial and operational data for the past 5 years. With board-level clearance, no one could block me. What I uncovered sent a shockwave through my system. Daniel's outsourcing wasn't a solo venture. He'd been colluding with Pinnacle Capital, a private equity firm quietly acquiring Nextron shares through shell companies. Their strategy was textbook, slash operating costs, inflate short-term profits. Then sell the gutted company at a premium before the long-term damage surfaced. Daniel's outsourcing was the opening gambit, designed to weaken our innovation core and pave the way for a takeover. I found emails detailing his meetings with Pinnacle executives, spreadsheets projecting profit spikes, and memos outlining the gutting of our R. I said. 3 months later, Pinnacle starts buying shares. 5 months in, he pushes to outsource, despite record profits. I projected an email from Daniel to a Pinnacle executive, detailing cost cuts. Lillian leaned forward. "He was their plant," she said, her voice low. Howard Klein, our longest-serving board member, paled. "They were aiming for a controlling stake. If they'd succeeded, Nextron would have been stripped bare. My patents had been the linchpin. Without my ownership, Daniel's plan would have rolled forward, dismantling everything Clara built." The board acted swiftly, approving a shareholder rights plan to block Pinnacle's creeping control. Daniel was fired for breach of fiduciary duty, his Pinnacle ties handed to federal regulators. Lillian pulled me aside after the meeting. "You saved Nextron twice, Elena, first with your patents, then by exposing this. I owe you more than I can say." I shook my head, thinking of Clara's foresight. It was her vision that saved us. Rebuilding became my focus. Sophie returned as my deputy, bringing Mark and Priya with her. We started sketching the VAX 700, a system that would leapfrog competitors. I pushed for a new IP policy, giving engineers partial ownership of their innovations, with Nextron holding exclusive licenses. Lillian dubbed it the Harper Protocol, a nod to my fight. At an all-hands meeting, I explained, innovation thrives when creators are valued. This isn't just about patents, it's about respect for the minds behind our success. The room nodded, a new energy buzzing. Vanessa Reed, Daniel's replacement, embraced the vision. Unlike Daniel's cost-cutting lens, she saw the value in knowledge and creativity. I'd love to see Daniel's face when he hears this, Sophie said during a planning session. I shook my head. This was never about revenge. It was about proving our worth, the technology, the people, all of it. Lillian, overhearing, smiled. That's why you belong in that chair, Elena. A month later, I visited Clara at her Bainbridge Island home. Her hands trembled with age, but her mind was a steel trap. They underestimated you, Elena, she said, grinning. But I never did. Then she dropped a bombshell. There's one more patent you don't know about. Buried in old filings was a master patent for an adaptive control algorithm, co-owned by Clara and me through a holding company. It protected the core of every VAX system and beyond, a hidden shield she'd crafted for crises like this. I spent days verifying it with Rachel, the discovery a jolt of awe. When Pinnacle's proxy, Victor Klein, joined the board, we unveiled the master patent. His arrogance melted as he read the documents. This covers everything, he choked out. It does, I said, my voice steady. Pinnacle's takeover collapsed. They sold their shares at a loss, and Klein vanished after 2 meetings. The victory was bittersweet. I thought of the colleagues we'd lost, the trust Daniel had shattered. Today, Nextron thrives. Our VAX 700 prototypes are setting new benchmarks. And the Harper Protocol has made us a talent magnet. I mentor a new generation, including Sophie's apprentice, a bright kid named Liam. Reflecting on my journey, from engineer to executive, I see the truth Clara always knew. Real power lies with the quiet creators, the ones who build. And I'm just getting started.